by lightning!
I remember seeing Back to the Future 2 in the theater and being surprised at the end to see a full trailer for the third movie. You usually don't go into a movie and see a complete trailer for the next movie. It's just not something that happens. Imagine going in to see Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and seeing a trailer at the end for Return of the King. But one thing I can say, most people were already decided they didn't like this movie. Taking place in 1885 with the Wild West theme made it feel like the black sheep of the trilogy. I have to admit, I didn't go see this one. Instead, I rented it when it came out on video. I didn't like it at first, but after seeing it again at a more mature age, I found it to be pretty good and a nice cap to the trilogy. Here's the plot. The time machine struck by lightning, sending Doc back to 1885, but he likes it there, so he decides to stay. But he also realizes Marty's still stuck in 1955, so he writes him a letter and instructs it to be delivered at that precise time by Count Floyd. Yeah, but now we're getting off track. The letter tells Marty that Doc hid the time machine in a cave, so that means it's been resting there for all those years. But wait a minute, does that mean there's been two time machines in 1955? I guess so. So Marty gets the time machine, but before he can go back, he finds out Doc gets shot by Biff's ancestor, Mad Dog Tannen.
Mad Dog. I hate that name.
So now, there's a little change of plans. Instead of going to 1985, he goes back to 1885 to save Doc. But once he gets there, the time machine's fuel tank gets ruptured. This means it can no longer get up to 88 miles per hour, the speed needed for time travel. And this is where the movie gets interesting. It's just Doc and Marty discussing all kinds of ways to solve the problem, and it's a race against time before that fateful incident with Mad Dog happens. They decide they're going to push the DeLorean with the train, but the railroad track isn't finished, so Doc has to explain that the track will be finished when they go back into the future. The logic is all pretty interesting, and it's just fun to hear Doc talk about all that scientific stuff. This movie has a lot of that. It's just Doc and Marty interacting. That's the best part.
Just calm down. It's me. It's Marty.
No, it can't be you! I sent you back to the future!
That's right, Doc. That's right, but I came back again. I came back from the future. Don't you remember last night? You fainted. I brought you home.
This can't be happening! You can't be here! It doesn't make sense for you to be here! I refuse to believe that you are here!
My favorite moment is when Marty realizes that he's the one who's going to be shot. So he actually switches places with Doc, and at the same time, not only do they switch places, they switch catchphrases.
Great Scott! I know, this is heavy.
I'm not going to say my favorite lines because I think that sums it all up so well. So that's what's good about the movie, but the rest of it's lacking. Like I said, it's a hard act to follow. Inevitably, the same gags and situations get repeated. But the one thing I never liked was Clara. She's Doc's love interest, and once she comes into the movie, all the trouble starts. And trouble's what makes the movies exciting. But here, it's so obvious that if Doc would just leave her alone, everything would be fine. It's a good movie, but it's a big step below the first two. My overall impressions of the trilogy. They're three well-written films. They keep going back and forth in time, changing the sequence of events. They're like fourth-dimensional stories, and through them we learn the whole history of Hill Valley and its characters. The first movie revolves around Marty. It's all about whether his parents get together and if he ceases to exist. The second movie is all about Biff and his rise to power.
Buttheads.
He's not just a bully this time, but a ruler almost. The whole stability of Hill Valley depends on whether he has the almanac or not. The third one's the Doc's movie. It's all about saving his life, and in the long run, he comes to terms with the trouble that the time machines caused, has a love interest, and in the end has a family. If anything, these movies are always fun to talk about. We could spend hours discussing our favorite moments, the timeline, and all the little details. I always pick up on something new. I always like to point out that scene in Part 3 where Doc's getting ready to send Marty back to 1885.
Clint Eastwood never wore anything like this.
Okay, he mentions Clint Eastwood. Notice that he's pointing at two movie posters on the wall, Revenge of the Creature and Tarantula. Those happen to be two of Clint Eastwood's first movies in which he had very small roles. In Revenge of the Creature, he plays a lab technician. In Tarantula, he's a pilot. Both these movies were released in 1955. That's the same year this scene is supposed to take place, so it makes perfect sense that these movies would be playing. Of course, this was before he was a big star.
Clint who?
That's right. You haven't heard of him yet.
Marty.
But anyway, time travel's always interesting. It's fantasy. We know we can't go back and change our past, but we can control our future. Because as Doc Brown says, the future's unwritten, it's what we make of it.